Hello and welcome to Murmurs of Time. As you settle in tonight, perhaps, nestled under warm covers, the hush of your room gently enveloping you, I invite you to drift back, far back, past glowing screens and humming lights, past engines and towers of glass, back to a world where silence was broken only by the wind across fields, the lowing of cattle, and the tolling of distant bells. Tonight, we step softly into the past, to the long, cold centuries of medieval Europe, not as knights or kings, but as ordinary souls. Imagine yourself in a small village where the fire crackles low and hunger waits just beyond the door, where life is ruled by land, by weather, by the church, and where survival is a quiet, daily act of endurance. Over the next 2 hours, we'll explore 4 intertwined glimpses of this world. First, it's the unvarnished experience of a medieval peasant, and why a single winter might have broken even the strongest among us. Then, a tale of faith and power, of a cathedral made sacred by blood, the murder of Thomas Becket. Next, we follow whispers across continents, chasing the myth of the Templar treasure, buried or burned, but never found. And finally, we ascend into stone halls and candlelit chambers to see what the nobility truly did with their time. But for now, let the past unfold slowly. Let your thoughts dim with the lanterns as we begin with the humble hut of a peasant and the cold bite of medieval winter. Why you wouldn't last a winter in a thatched hut? Imagine yourself waking in darkness, not because it's still night, but because the sun has yet to rise, and perhaps one tea break fully through the clouds for many hours yet. You're wrapped in a blanket of coarse wool, not for comfort, but for warmth, thin and scratchy and never quite enough. The air is icy. Your breath rises in visible puffs. The thatched roof above your head is rimmed with frost, and the clay floor beneath is hard as stone. There is no glass in the windows, only shutters of rough wood, and they do little to keep the chill from creeping in. You are a peasant, bound to this land, this village. It is the winter of 1321, or perhaps 1278. The exact year does not matter. What matters is the hunger in your belly, the deep ache in your bones. The structure of the hut, the home, is a single room shared by your entire family. There is no privacy here. The walls are wattle and daub-woven sticks daubed with mud, and the thatched roof leaks when the snow begins to melt. You keep animals inside with you, not only for safekeeping, but for warmth. A goat, perhaps, a chicken or two. Their warmth helps to push back the cold, just a little. Their smell, however, is less forgiving. The fire pit is central, but smoke clings low to the rafters. There is no chimney, only a small hole in the roof, which you dare not widen lest the cold slip in faster. Your eyes sting often. The scent of damp earth and old ashes never leaves your skin. The rhythm of winter days each day follows a rhythm. It's not one of luxury or choice, but of necessity. You rise with the gray dawn to tend the animals, if any remain. Perhaps one was sold before the snow came, traded for grain, or slaughtered and salted, though salt is precious, and not every village has enough. You trudge to the well, if it hasn't frozen over. The wooden bucket is heavy with ice along the rim. If the village has a communal oven, you might take a turn. Baking what little you have barley bread, dense and coarse, more husk than grain. Wheat is for the Lord. Hush! You would not dare dream of white flour. There is no abundance. The harvest has long passed, and the stores grow thin. Root vegetables, turnips, parsnips, onions begin to rot if not carefully watched. You scrape off mold and cook what you can. The stew always stew, simmers low, watery, barely flavored, stretched across days. Sickness and illness lingers in the corners of the hut. Coughs echo softly through the village, constant and familiar. Lice burrow into seams and bedding. Children scratch in their sleep. You've seen the boils before, perhaps on a cousin, a neighbor, the priest's helper who no longer comes. They come in winter and do not always leave. There are no doctors here, no medicine in the modern sense. Only old women with knowledge of herbs, some permitted, others whispered of in fear. A bitter tea, a poultice made from animal fat and ash. Sometimes they help, sometimes they don't, and yet you go on. Because what choice is there? Moments of warmth, even in this world, there are moments of peace, of shared warmth. A child's laughter when the snow falls heavy and clean. The quiet joy of surviving another week. The distant bell of the church marking the passage of time. It's the comfort of ritual, of knowing that even in this hard life, you belong. The rhythm of their lives, your life, follows nature and faith and tradition. You may gather with others to share stories, to repair tools, to listen to a wandering friar or a bard if one braves the road. Your Lord rarely comes. When he does, it is for taxes or disputes. You bow, kneel, wait to be dismissed. His world is distant, unreachable, but yours is grounded in the soil. It's cold and relentless, but also real, tangible. It is all you know. It's a long wait for spring, and then always the waiting for snow to soften, for ice to crack, for buds to appear on trees you watch with quiet hope. You know that not everyone will see the spring, the old, the sick, the unlucky. But if you do, if your family does, then it will begin again. The fields, the planting, the sun on your face. But for now, winter holds you. A silent, ancient grip. And in the stillness of the night, as the fire burns low and your body aches from labor and cold, you listen. To the wind sighing across the thatch, to the breath of animals sleeping nearby, to the whisper of time itself. The murder of Thomas Becket. Let us now step away from the thatched hut and its bitter chill. Let's walk instead toward stone, toward the echoing halls of faith and the long shadows of power. It is the year 1170. The place, Canterbury. The great cathedral rises like a silent ship from the Kentish earth, and at its heart, a man, cloaked not only in robes, but in conflict. Thomas Becket. To understand his end, we must first understand his rise. And so we return once again to the beginning. From clerk to chancellor, Thomas was not born to nobility. He was the son of merchants, London-born, sharp-witted, and finely educated. Imagine him, as a boy poring over Latin texts by flickering candlelight, the ink smudged on his fingers, the cold of English stone pressing up from the floor. His mind, quick, his manner, ambitious, but soft-spoken. In time he rose through the church, and then further, catching the eye of a king. Henry II. Now picture the two men, Becket and Henry, not as rivals, but as friends. Riding together, laughing in the spray of English rain, sharing ideas, meals, confidences. Henry, bold and brash. Thomas, clever and deliberate. Henry made Thomas as chancellor one of the most powerful men in the realm. It was a perfect alignment for a while, and then the king made a fateful decision. An unwelcome promotion. Henry needed control. The church held too much power. So he appointed Thomas Becket, his trusted companion, as Archbishop of Canterbury, the highest religious authority in England. Henry believed Thomas would be loyal to him first, and God second. But Thomas changed, or perhaps revealed himself. He took the robe seriously, the vows, the role, the sacred duty. He wore sackcloth beneath his finery. He fasted. He prayed more often. When the king tried to force reforms curbing church courts, asserting royal authority, Thomas resisted. Imagine the strain. Two men, once close, now drifting apart. The language between them, once easy, now sharpened by silence. In 1164, Becket fled England across the sea to France to exile. 6 long years passed, seasons turned, kings aged, and then Thomas returned. Returned to Canterbury. It was December. The air, sharp and wet. The cathedral loomed in gray light. Thomas returned to Canterbury to a hero's welcome. Bells rang out. Candles flickered in every chapel. People whispered blessings, and a few muttered curses. His path was not without enemies. Among them, the king's men. Henry, in Normandy, was told of Becket's actions, his refusal to yield, his renewed excommunications. And in a moment of rage, he spoke words that echoed into history. "Will no one rid me of this turbulent priest?" It was not a command, but it was enough. The cathedral and the sword for knights crossed the sea. Names you may not remember: Reginald Fitzurse, Hugh de Morville, William de Tracy, Richard le Breton. But they rode with a shared purpose, forged from fury and silence. On December 29th, they entered Canterbury. Snow crunched beneath their boots. Their breath steamed in the cold air. Inside the cathedral, the monks were beginning vespers, The candles glowed. The chant drifted like incense, soft and solemn. And then, steel entered the sacred space. The knights demanded Becket recant. He refused. He stood firm, his robes heavy, his eyes calm. The blows fell. Not quickly, not loudly, but with weight, with intent. In that holy place, a man of God fell. Aftermath and echoes, the news spread with quiet horror. The cathedral floor was consecrated with blood. The church mourned. The king wept. Yes, even Henry. He wore sackcloth, walked barefoot through Canterbury, submitted to a ritual flogging by monks 20 lashes. Public penance. Thomas was declared a martyr, then a saint. Pilgrims came to his tomb in endless procession. They lit candles, whispered prayers, touched the stone. Canterbury became a place of healing, mystery, of stories whispered through generations. But more than that, Thomas Becket became an idea, a reminder of what happens when power seeks to own faith and faith refuses. Soft transition, and so we leave the candlelit stone and whispered prayers, the blood-washed floor and the echoes of chants. We turn now to another mystery, not born of violence, but of silence, of riddles, of lost treasures and ancient orders. The Knights Templar await. The Templar treasure that was never found there is a certain silence that clings to stories never resolved, and not the silence of forgetting, but the kind that invites curiosity, even as it soothes the restless mind. Now, imagine yourself beneath a pale dawn sky. A column of knights ride slowly across the dusted plains of the Holy Land. Their white mantles ripple in the breeze, each one marked with a single red cross. Steel glints at their sides, but their faces remain calm, disciplined. They are the Knights Templar, and they are riding into legend. An order born in faith and fire formed in the early 12th century, not long after the First Crusade. The Knights Templar began as humble protectors at men, no more sworn to guard Christian pilgrims journeying to Jerusalem. Their home was modest, built atop the ruins of Solomon's Temple, a place thick with biblical history and sacred expectation. It was this foundation that gave them their name, the poor fellow soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon. But poverty did not last long. Rising power within a few decades, the Templars had grown rich immensely. So knights across Europe gave them land. Kings offered privileges. Popes granted them independence from local laws. Imagine sprawling estates, stone fortresses, vineyards in France, England, Spain. Picture temples and treasuries built not with extravagance, but precision, secure, silent, impenetrable. But it wasn't just land or gold. The Templars mastered finance. They became the first international bankers of Europe. A pilgrim could deposit funds in London and retrieve them safely in Acre. Sealed codes, guarded caravans, and tightly held records made it all possible. Their wealth grew, so did whispers. The treasure begins to vanish. What was the Templar treasure? No one knows for certain. Some believe it was gold, vast hoards stored beneath their Paris temple. Others claim it was relics, objects of immeasurable power and holiness. The Ark of the Covenant, the Holy Grail, even fragments of the true cross. Most likely, it was none of these, perhaps all of them in different forms. What we do know is this. In 1307, the silence around the Templars was shattered. A Friday to remember. October 13th, a Friday. Under a gray French sky, knights across the kingdom were arrested suddenly and all at once. King Philip IV of France, drowning in debt to the order, had resolved to erase it. Accusations were whispered. Heresy, idolatry, unnatural rites. The charges were likely false. The motives was purely financial, but the damage was done. Their properties seized, their leaders tortured. Their Grand Master, Jacques de Maule, burned at the stake, his face stoic, his silence intact, and the treasure gone. Where did it go? Many believe the Templars had time to prepare. That word reached them in advance. And that on the eve of their arrest, the gold was quietly moved. Loaded onto carts in the night. Hidden in crypts, buried beneath chapels, or shipped away across the sea. Some say it was taken to Scotland. Others, to Portugal. Still others trace the treasure to the shores of Cyprus. Or even across the Atlantic long before Columbus ever sailed. Theories bloom like ivy around old stone, Some tell of traps beneath Roslyn Chapel, or coded carvings in forgotten abbeys. Others speak of Masonic legacies and secret maps etched into walls no longer standing. But the treasure itself remains unfound. Myth becomes comfort. Perhaps there is no gold. Perhaps the treasure was never coins or cups or chalices. Perhaps it was knowledge, a sacred text, a lost gospel, a map of forgotten truths held in reverent silence. And perhaps that silence is the point. For in that stillness legends thrive, and in the search we glimpse not gold, but the quiet persistence of wonder. Soft transition as we close the chapter on the Templars and oaths in silence. On treasure that may never have existed, we prepare now to cross into the world of light and laughter, not of peasants, not of knights, but of those who lived in luxury. The lords and ladies of the realm, the nobility, let us rise softly into feathered beds, tiled halls, and tables that groaned with meats and sweets, and ask, without haste, what did the nobles actually do all day? What nobility actually did all day? Close your eyes and imagine a great stone hall. Sunlight streaming through stained glass, fire murmuring softly in the hearth, and tapestries fluttering faintly in the draught. Here, in a world far removed from the dirt-floored huts and cold cloisters, the nobility live lives of stillness and ceremony, of leisure and obligation. But beneath the glittering surface, what did they truly do from dawn to dusk and dusk to dawn? Let us follow them gently through a day in the life of the morning. Rituals and robes, a noble's day begins, not with toil, but with ritual. As first light slips past the shutters, servants stir quietly. Warming water is brought to the chamber, linen laid out, clothes chosen fine wool, fur-trimmed cloaks, silk if the season permits. You do not rise alone. A lady's maid or a manservant assists in dressing. Layers are fastened with polished pins, rings slid onto fingers, belts fastened with care. A quiet prayer follows, often in Latin, sometimes alone, sometimes with a private chaplain. Then breaking fast, bread white, soft, and fresh. Cheese, fruit preserved in honey, perhaps a cup of warmed ale or spiced wine. Meat is rare at breakfast, but not forbidden. And then the day begins, slowly, with measured purpose. Midday, duties, audiences, and courtly games, contrary to romantic visions, nobility did not idly lounge the day away. Though they did not till the soil or patch roofs, their lives were filled with obligations of a different kind. If the noble holds land, he likely does. He must preside over manorial courts. Disputes between tenants, questions of inheritance, land usage, all require rulings, records, and signatures. He may meet with stewards, inspect accounts, read letters sealed in wax. A noble lady, meanwhile, oversees the household. She may manage servants, plan feasts, oversee weaving rooms, or ensure that stores are properly stocked. Later, there may be guests. Receiving a visiting knight, a neighboring baroness, or a local priest is part of the day's shape. Tea is not yet known in Europe, but wine flows freely watered down, gently spiced. Conversation is soft, never hurried. Stories are shared, news is exchanged. Then leisure, perhaps a hunt if the weather's fair. Falconry, silent wings sweeping the sky. Or a game of chess, heavy pieces clicking against polished wood. The rhythm of their lives is ceremonial, but not empty. Even in rest, there are rules. The afternoon. Letters and lessons education is prized among the elite. Not all nobles could read, but many could, especially the women. In quiet corners of solar chambers, a lady might pore over a book of ours, its pages illuminated with gold and blue, each letter a work of art. Children of noble birth begin lessons early. They are taught Latin, manners, the art of heraldry. Boys learn swordplay, riding, diplomacy. Girls learn music, embroidery, and household management.
Some like Eleanor of Aquitaine
Would learn politics and power as well. Letters are penned, seals pressed into warm wax. A nobleman may write to his liege lord. A lady may correspond with a cousin or confidant in another shire. It is a world of soft exchanges, of words carried on horseback across long distances, evening feasts, music, and firelight as the sun descends. Torches are lit. The great hall fills slowly. Trestle tables are set. Banners ripple from rafters above. Dinner is served late, sometimes near sunset. It is the grandest meal of the day. Imagine roast pheasant, venison, fish baked with herbs, trenchers of bread, golden with egg and saffron, bowls of stewed fruit, spices brought from distant lands, nutmeg, cinnamon, clove precious and potent. But not all eat equally, as the highest nobles dine closest to the Lord. Lesser guests eat further down the table. The meal is as much about order as it is about flavor. Afterward, music. Lutes, harps, the soft thrum of a rebec. A troubadour recites a tale of love or war. Perhaps a jester capers in the corner, drawing laughter. Conversation softens. The fire crackles. The wine flows slower. And then, one by one, the nobles drift away. Night, candles, prayers, and silence, the halls grow still. Only the gentle hiss of embers remains. In bedchambers warmed by braziers, candles are snuffed. Windows are shuttered against wind. Final prayer is whispered, sometimes from memory, sometimes read. And sleep comes easily to those wrapped in wool and feather, guarded by stone walls and servants waiting silently nearby. The rhythm of their lives is not one of struggle, but of order. A life built upon the labor of others, a world as carefully layered as the robes they wear. Soft transition to ending. And so we end our quiet journey through the past, from the frozen fields of peasantry, through the sacred tension of church and crown, into whispered legends of buried treasure, and finally, to the firelit ease of nobility. But though their lives differed, all were bound by time, by seasons, by belief, by silence, and sound. Conclusion: as the night deepens around you, let these lives from long ago settle softly in your thoughts. The peasant's cold hut, the archbishop's defiance, the Templar's vanished fortune, the noble's slow day. So far from our own time, yet not so different. They too wondered, worried, hoped. They too listened to the wind outside and wished for morning. Tonight, may their stories drift gently through your dreams, not to stir you, but to hold you, and as sleep comes. Remember that even history, when told in quiet murmur, can be a lullaby. Good night.